Hinnamnor is undergoing another strengthening process as it moves deeper into the East China Sea. It's now likely to get up towards a Category 4 strength peak. Here is your latest storm update on Typhoon Hinnamnor. If you do live in the regions that are about to be affected by this typhoon, including the far eastern reaches of China, Korea, both Koreas, and Japan, make sure you are paying attention because this is a very serious storm threat to you. Your latest update valid this September 4th, 2022 on what is now about to become a Category 3 Typhoon Hinnamnor and possibly quite a bit stronger than that. Let's jump straight into the forecast track for the storm. Here it is, Category 2 strength right now with winds of 105 miles per hour, a pressure of 944 millibars, 10-minute sustained winds of 100 miles an hour, that's 160 kilometers an hour, located at 26 degrees north, 124.5 degrees east, and moving north at 8 miles an hour at this time. In 12 hours time, we're expecting this to become a Category 3 strength typhoon. If we're talking about 36 hours out from now, we could be seeing a Category 4 strength typhoon before some more rapid weakening kicks into play, and the storm will clip the southern parts of South Korea, possibly delivering some very severe conditions to those areas. Here's what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has to say. They're holding at 90 knots right now. That's 100 miles per hour. That's certainly quite a bit low considering the storm's structure. Taking a look at where the storm's going to be going, again, they're calling for that landfall basically right on the city of Busan, which has a population, I believe, of 3 million people. That's a massive city to be impacted by such a powerful typhoon, and certainly widespread wind damages is a serious threat at this time, not to mention the Category 4 strength peak just offshore from Shanghai, one of the world's largest cities. The multi-model diagnostic comparison, you can see the HWF and the GFS both calling for some pretty serious strengthening, at least over the next 12 hours. It could jump up by around 20 knots or so, which would definitely take it into the Category 4 realm at this point. Deep layer wind shear will be dropping from about here on out after a sharp increase, but it doesn't look to be affecting the storm in too much of a way. Sea surface temperatures remaining good for at least the next day and a half before they absolutely tank. Mid-level humidity as well remaining good for that time before that too tanks. The track consensus as well, it's pretty certain where the storm's going to be going, and we could be seeing a landfall in Russia as well, though likely not as a tropical system. Let's have a look at some forecast models right now and see what is lying ahead for Hinnamnor. So here we are looking at the GFS model right now. This is the surface level winds. Green indicates tropical storm force conditions, purples in typhoon conditions, and if you do manage to see a speck of white, that's Category 3 or higher, major typhoon conditions around the storm center. If we start playing this run through, you can see the GFS really wrapping this storm up quite nicely as it moves deeper into the East China Sea. You can see a peak probably in the realm of around 90 to 95 knots at this time. That's certainly a little bit too low, I reckon, from the GFS. However, again, the GFS is notorious for lowballing, especially on Western Pacific storms. The forecasts that the GFS can issue sometimes, actually no, quite often do go out the window. Let's roll this thing right up towards Korea. That is indeed a landfall on Korea, although it would certainly be touch and go. It would not slide too far into the coast. Thankfully, the more powerful southeastern side of the storm does seem to remain offshore. However, certainly still could bring some major problems towards coastal parts, especially around Busan as well, which, like I said earlier, is a major metropolis and could suffer some very widespread wind damage event. To the likes that isn't seen that often. Busan is not built to cope with major typhoons impacting them, that's for sure. Certainly built for gales and tropical storms and that sort of stuff, because at the end of the day, they are in the tropics, but it certainly isn't built for a storm of this magnitude. So if you are in Busan, or even areas around Busan in South Korea, basically anywhere in South Korea that is prone to wind damages, Kyushu, southern Honshu in Japan, make sure you are preparing for a very significant typhoon to make passage. Most areas will receive tropical storm force conditions at least at some point on Kyushu. That looks pretty certain at this time. Honshu as well, southern Honshu could receive some pretty significant widespread wind damage, so make sure you're preparing for that as well. Like I said, these areas are built to withstand significant storms that make passage, but they're not built for storms sort of towards this magnitude. Thankfully, as it moves into the Sea of Japan and up towards Russia, the storm really does die off quite rapidly. It looks like it tries to make a landfall on Russia, but at this point, it looks like the storm's completely torn to shreds, so Korea might do some pretty significant damage to it. If we play the run through, you can see another couple of systems seem to try and spin up, one in the East China Sea where Hinnamnor is right now, and one just offshore from Japan, which seems to become a tropical storm briefly towards the end of the run. But apart from that, nothing really in the northern parts, the subtropical parts of the Western Pacific, maybe something more towards the deep tropics, but I don't have time to look at that now. Let's take a look at accumulating precipitation. So this is precipitation over the next 16 days. Well, it will be towards the end of the run at the next 16 days. So you can see what you're looking out for basically is anything into the purples and the whites. That's massive precipitation totals above 150 millimeters or more. Anything into the blues, you're sort of looking up towards 250, 300, and maybe even isolated spots of 500 or 600 millimeters. Like I said in the last video update, the GFS is not the highest resolution model out there, so some spots, some isolated mountainous spots could certainly be under some totals that might even amount up towards 1,000 millimeters, which could be half a year or even a year's worth of rainfall in the right place. So again, if you start playing this through, blues start to become apparent around the East China Sea where Hinnamnor is right now. That's sort of around 20 inches of rain rather right there, 500 millimeters, sorry. As you enter into Korea, the majority of South Korea, in fact, under around 10 inches of rain over the next 72 hours. So that's at least 250 millimeters. Certainly stuff that's going to cause some pretty minor flooding, maybe even moderate flooding as well in places, so watch out for that. And then, yeah, as you sort of get past around the 96-hour mark, so 4 days out from now, not much more is expected in the way of rainfall, maybe the odd heavy shower or so after that, but then certainly after that, it looks like it dies down for the next couple of days. But yeah, over the next 16 days, which is how long this model run is, certainly some places could receive hundreds, and yeah, as I said, some places might even receive 1,000 millimeters of rain, so it's certainly going to be a rain threat as well. Basically, prepare for massive wind gusts, prepare for massive rainfall totals, and if you're a coastal person, also prepare for colossal wave heights, which could approach the 15 meter or 50 feet mark. And that's also not to say that Japan's going to be spared from this storm. I mean, southern Kyushu, again, under around 6 inches of rain, that's 150 millimeters, so it's an all-round threat, and it's going to be impacting a very wide realm of people, that's for sure. Even Shanghai as well, a city with nearly 30 million people, that's going to be under some very significant rainfall as well, and that's on top of the rainfall that they're already having right now. So pretty significant stuff that's being seen around the Western Pacific right now. Hinnamnor certainly shaping up to be a worst case scenario storm. Let's take a gander at the eye. Our satellite imagery now looking like a very powerful typhoon, that's for sure. An apparent eye surrounded by minus 80-degree cloud tops. That's textbook Category 3, Category 4 strength stuff right here. The eye really just has to clear out now. Maybe the western eye wall could do with a little bit of bulking, but it's looking really sharp, that's for sure. It also has some pretty decent outflow up towards the north, and it looks like it might try and develop an inflow band somewhere around the western side of the storm. But right now, provided it doesn't try an eye wall replacement cycle, Hinnamnor looking really decent, that's for sure. Visible satellite imagery as the sun rises over the storm. The eye pretty much only filled with cirrus right now, high cirrus sort of clouds, and that's sinking around and being squeezed out of the eye. So at this time, it's looking really sharp for a typhoon. And don't be fooled, you don't have to be in the eye wall to receive the tropical storm force conditions. Ishigaki Island still having sustained winds of 54 knots, that's 74 knot gusts. And that is approximately, or maybe 100 nautical miles outside of the eye at this time. So it's definitely a widespread storm packing a significant punch. Here's a look at the water vapor satellite imagery. Mid-level humidity is not a problem for the storm, that's for sure. The eye really becoming quite apparent on this imagery, getting darker and darker. That's the stuff you want to see. The drier the eye, the stronger the storm, basically, more or less, really. And yeah, look at it. It's the outflow is extending right out to the Western Pacific and maybe even across to the Mariana Islands as well, down to northern Luzon. So it's certainly a massive system. Here's a look at the true color and a wide view scan of it as well. I love this imagery. You can see the beautiful blue juxtaposed to the gorgeous green of China. You might even be able to make out some cities there as well, but look at the storm, the dominating feature in the East China Sea, and it's barely even entered it. The dominating feature in the Western Pacific for sure. Nothing else can form in the Western Pacific when you've got something like this. that's for sure. Anyways, that is the latest that I have on Typhoon Hinnamnor from Force 13. Make sure you do subscribe. Your support really does mean a lot to us here. Leave a like on the video as well. Check out our merch store. Check out the Patreon. Check out the Discord server as well. Come join some like-minded people for a quick chat. It's a very enjoyable place, that's for sure. But that is all that I have on Typhoon Hinnamnor. A very powerful storm. Make sure you are aware and don't be fooled by the small core. This storm is a massive threat. It is a massive system, and it certainly will pack a punch to any land areas it impacts.